All right, welcome back to Digital Perspectives, everybody. I'm Brad Kimes. You can follow me on Twitter at BackupBradleyAbove. Shout out to Michael C. for really some great stuff that he's been sending me, and so many others, and we're going to get to them in a second. But obviously, the normal list of guys that are sending stuff and putting stuff out here for all of us in the crypto space are so phenomenal, with XRP Crypto Wolf, Michael Val, 5 Links, DJ Peter Vass, and so many others. And I Am Legion is another one. There's just so many. Darren Moore. It's quite a space we got with these people in it, and I feel grateful for them. So this one came from Michael C. What we're going to look at today, just really quickly here. Before I get going, I think it's pretty well known. I've made a couple comments in front of my videos, but you're going to see ads that are like scammy ads that YouTube has allowed from taking paid advertising dollars and allowed these scammers to pay for advertising, and they're in front of pretty much everybody that's doing crypto. I would just warn you that any giveaways that you see, be very, very careful. Understand 100% what you're clicking on, what you may be willing to participate in. Make sure you vet anything you plan on pursuing and understand whether that is a scam or not. I can tell you for a fact, Ripple's made it very clear that they don't do Ripple giveaways. So anything you see associated with that, and I think I've even seen something lately where the scammers have even taken to ETH and Vitalik Buterin, who's also not involved in any of these giveaway scams. So just be careful with anything going on out here. Listen, whether it's crypto or just life in general, before you get out of bed to put your feet on the floor, just know somebody's out here trying to get you. So head on a swivel. It's crypto and it's life. Just have your head on a swivel and understand that not everything is free. And if it's too good to be true, more than likely, it probably is. All right, so we're going to start again. One of the narratives we've talked about and trends we've seen in this space covering this material is simply that everything develops from a global consortium or international organization, and then the regulation or suggestion for legislation begins to trickle down. So far, it's been regulatory efforts. Here is another example of that, starting at the top, including everybody, and I believe we're going to see this steamroll downhill, and I think we're going to show you evidence of that. Okay, here is a piece from Michael C., July 29th of last year, and this is from the International Organizations of Securities Commissions, the IOSCO. Now, what's interesting about this is that when you get into this document, they obviously address the whole idea of crypto asset trading platforms. Now, there's a spot in here I want to bring you to where, here it is right here. Innovators need actionable regulatory guidance developed with industry input and understand various crypto asset platforms and uses regarding the standards and the factors that securities regulators believe are appropriate for evaluation of whether a crypto asset constitutes a security. In addition, clear statements that certain crypto assets such as Bitcoin, Ether, and XRP and similar tokens are not considered and of themselves to be securities. Currently, determinations are made on a case-by-case basis and jurisdiction-by-jurisdiction basis for individual crypto assets. And in certain jurisdictions, those determinations may change over time as the characteristics of the platform on which a given crypto asset is used change. So as a result, many cryptos assets distributions are vital to projects where companies attempting to create innovative solutions using blockchain and have been jeopardized by the existing regulatory uncertainty, creating guidelines and space for crypto assets to exist on a global scale under appropriate guidelines would benefit innovative and minimize fraudulent activities. Well said. So I wanted to lay this out because, again, this document is really on the international level. Now I want to take you to the next piece here and just read this really quickly, and we'll move on to the next piece of news. Safeguarding participant assets, custody of crypto assets. Now you know how big custody has been an issue. Poli-sci. So Custody crypto asset securities is an important aspect of customer protection. The SEC and FINRA in the United States recently highlighted concerns related to custody of digital securities in a joint statement specific to the customer protection rule applicable to broker-dealers. Given that many crypto trading platforms, CTPs, that provide non-intermediated access to retail customers perform the function of the exchange and the broker-dealer. This guidance is particularly relevant with crypto assets. There is no object stored physically anywhere in the world. Rather, records are maintained on a blockchain showing transactions and transfers of ownership that have occurred by sending and receiving crypto assets via a software wallet using public-private key encryption. The technologies and methods used to maintain ownership and to safeguard these assets are constantly evolving. For example, the application of multi-signature technology adds a layer of complexity to the custody requirements for these assets because the keys necessary to execute a transaction may be in multiple physical locations. Public and private keys are analogous to a username and password, where the public key, like a username, may be viewed by anyone, and the private key, like a password, is stored privately and is used in conjunction with the public key to access the software. What a great analogy. Regulators and policymakers will need to understand the ways in which ownership of these new assets is currently reflected and be mindful of the evolution of the technologies as they consider guidance to market participants on the application of existing regulatory requirements surrounding custody to innovative technologies. Break this down. So what I break and take away from this is simply this. We have said that custody is a major issue because the current state of affairs is because what we currently have is really not scalable at the time. Now, you can do cold storage, you can do hot storage right on exchanges, and you can do cold storage offline on a store like a Ledger Nano. These are all great, comfortable solutions. However, for the market to mature, these are not scalable solutions, so to speak. There needs to be some changes. Another angle to be addressed in here that they're touching on is the centralization of crypto trading platforms. They do everything. That is not the way it works when you superimpose the traditional market infrastructure over top of this new crypto space. There are separate companies, LLC companies, that do the holding and the storing, right? You buy it from the platform Fidelity, but then it's stored in a third-party place, right, by a different company. Even if the umbrella parent company owns those two companies, that is the normal path to a framework that looks like where we've come from. Now, I know that the innovative technology is going to take us to a new place, but we do have to recognize that exchanges are centralized. You may talk about Bitcoin and being decentralized and nobody can stop it in the tech, and I agree with that. But the point is that you still have to go to a very centralized location, which is an exchange, to buy and sell it. Now, with that being said, Mickey B and I had covered this extensively and played clips on some people talking about this very subject. And I think it's fitting that we see an international body addressing this and then citing the SEC and FINRA that are having the same exact conversations about how to deal with that situation, maybe decentralize and break that up, the storage and the buying and the brokerage part of the whole thing being so centralized. But then again, they're also very sensitive to the fact, and what they're saying here, to the innovation and the technology itself. They don't want to hinder what's happening by putting something in place that could harm the growth of the technology. So, all right, now let's keep this moving. So international level, that's what's taking place. This next one comes from XRP Roadrunner. Really great stuff here. Let's get into this article. Warning, global currency digitalization could destroy crypto by July 21st. Say what? The end of crypto as we know it could come as soon as July 21st, and it could cause a massive flow of capital into gold and precious metals. It could bring the biggest, fastest bubble burst in the history of the market. Now's the time to ditch your crypto assets, if any, and move your assets to safety. Really? I read this and was like, well, I'm reading the rest of this article. So here's what they say, and let's get into this. The governments and central banks of the world's 20 biggest economies have a problem on their hands. What to do about the meteoric rise of cryptocurrencies? And a few years ago, when cryptos were dominated by a few nerds and cranking operating on the deep web, it was a little more than a nuance and could be safely ignored. Today, things are different. Cryptocurrencies are siphoned hundreds of billions off the banking system and the traditional economies into a shadowy global networks exchange that are out of their control. Well, I mean, listen, I think some of this is about selling a different narrative throughout here, but let's stay with this article for a second. The bankers hate it because they can't stick you with the hefty surcharge on every transaction or line their pockets by citing on an overnight float. An increasing debt-laden and revenue-starved government hate it because they can't seize it, tax it, or control it, which is not exactly true at this point. They can. You better be reporting your crypto. They need to do something about that, and so every G20 member nation has already taken at least exploratory steps to create national cryptocurrency of their own, otherwise known as digital dollars or CBDCs. Many of them have also moved to severely limited the availability of cash and curb cash transactions. Some have taken key notes out of circulation. Others have outright prohibited cash transaction in some contexts or pressured banks to do the same. India, for example, no longer allows landlords to accept rent payments in cash. How about this? That's pretty interesting. These are but preliminary steps to coming crackdown. We don't need to rely on fringe media outlets for this information. All this has been reported and by well-respected mainstream news outlets such as Newsmax, Forbes, Bloomberg, and the Financial Times. The aim, eliminate untraceable and untaxable transactions and corral private wealth into accounts that governments can freeze, confiscate, tax with just a few keystrokes. Now, some of this might be a little extremely cynical, but I think it's also broadly accurate. Which brings us to July 1st. That's the date that the third and the last of a series of G20 conferences take place in Buenos Aires, Argentina, at which the cryptocurrency problem is at the top of the agenda. The point of the meeting is to put the final touches on a global plan to destroy free market crypto as we know it. Many observers are anticipating G20-wide ban of crypto trading and mining, a move that is likely to cause an immediate collapse of 99% of all crypto assets currently in existence. You guys remember when Brad Garlinghouse used to say that too? Free market cryptocurrencies would be quickly wiped out, possibly overnight. Hundreds of billions in wealth would disappear. Crypto aficionados would flee for the exits in a panic selling to get out in time. In other words, governments are now setting up a total, complete destruction of an entire asset class. If it comes to pass, it could spark the biggest single asset bubble collapse in market history. As for investors, the lucky ones may escape with pennies on the dollar. The smart ones already buying gold. And we can see the nature of why this article's been written, right, for gold. But the truth is, I'm going to hold up right here for a second, because the truth is that, you know, obviously this person's writing the article to, you know, show the benefits of owning gold. And there certainly are. I think gold's fantastic. It's not investment advice. It's just my personal opinion. But the reality is what they don't know is that they are building the regulatory framework and asking the right questions because crypto is going to stay. However, I want to go back to the 99% of the crypto space assets may actually get crushed. Well, Brad Garlinghouse has said that. I think over time, 90-some or 99% of the assets go away. We don't need 5,000 or 6,000 crypto assets. We don't need them. We just need the ones that have a use case, right? So that's really the point of this, and I wanted to show you that. Now, a couple things I wanted to draw from this is that, you know, first of all, let's take a look at the G20 schedule, you know, and the G20 is having a fourth digital economy task force meeting on the 20th and 21st. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because we also remember going back to the FATF international body connected to the G20 just recently in June, had a deadline for AML KYC for all crypto exchanges. I think 10% of all the exchanges have basically fell into compliance at this point. There's a long way to go. However, we have to remember July 21st, which is coming up in just 2 days, right? So on Tuesday, they will vote on Judy Shelton, and let's see if she gets a Fed chair position, and she gets to pursue her idea of a new gold-backed dollar system in a cryptocurrency way. So to add to that, we can't forget about, in the U.S., the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And the fact that I'm going to read this summary right here, and I want you to understand what's happening. Because crypto assets aren't going to go away, especially if they're deemed a currency. Final rule, official interpretation, the Electronic Fund Transfer Act, as amended by the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, establishes certain protections for consumers sending international money transfers or remittance transfers. The Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection Bureau Remittance Rule and Regulation E, Remittance Rule or Rule, implements these protections. The Bureau is amending Regulation E and the official interpretations of Regulation E to provide tailored exceptions to address compliance challenges that insured institutions may face in certain circumstances upon the expiration of a statutory exception that allows insured institutions to disclose estimates instead of exact amounts to consumers. It allows insured institutions to disclose estimates instead of exact amounts to consumers. That exception expires on July 21st, 2020. In addition, the Bureau is increasing a safe harbor threshold in the rule related to whether a person makes remittance transfers in the normal course of its business. This final rule is effective July 21st, 2020. Here's where we get into the spot that we need to understand. And we've covered this before back in May when it came out, but it needs to be discussed again with these articles that are coming out, and just to kind of understand international level down to domestic, and let's see where we go from here. Recent market developments and potential solutions. In the assessment report, the Bureau observed that the remittance market has undergone substantial change since the rule became effective. Now, it says recent market developments and potential solutions. Specifically, the assessment report describes several developments regarding the growth and incorporation of innovative technologies by providers of cross-border money transfers and other companies that support such providers. The Bureau has continued to monitor the remittance transfer market since the publication of the assessment reports and observes that most of these developments continue to progress. Examples include the continued growth and expanding functionality of the Society Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, known as SWIFT, Global Payment Innovation, which is GPI, tracking product which can increase the amount of upfront information available, sending institutions the upfront information, which is exactly what the amendment to this rule is about, right? And the expansion of major payment card networks' capacity to support cross-border payments. The continued growth of fintech non-bank remittance transfers. The continued growth of fintech non-bank remittance transfer providers and their future expansion into partnerships and other relationships with banks and credit unions, which allow such entities to tap into the closed network payment system that non-bank remittance transfer providers have developed, which allows such entities to tap into the closed network payment systems that non-bank, like Ripple, remittance transfer providers have developed, or even MoneyGram attached to Ripple. The continued growth, expanding partnerships of virtual currency companies such as Ripple, which offer both payment messaging platform to support cross-border money transfers, as well as virtual currency, not security, not commodity, virtual currency, XRP, which can be used to effect settlement of those transfers. That's where we are today. I'm not reading and showing you this stuff because I expect July 21st the price to go ballistic. I think that especially when we're talking about U.S. domestic regulatory bodies and agencies, there is an enormous amount of intertwining and overlapping that happens between the respective agencies. But between the OCC and Brian Brooks' remarks that he's going to be releasing a federal charter in the fall, he will be speaking specifically to banks custodying digital assets. He will be speaking specifically to FDIC protection for virtual asset service providers. What do you think that's going to do for business to business and peer to peer wanting to use those particular services, knowing that they will be FDIC protected just as the banks are? This is pretty remarkable. And I'm just saying that these are real fundamental points that we need to pay attention to find out how well they solidify going forward or not. How much of an impact do they have in bringing along the other respective regulatory bodies to get the kind of clarity we need to open the gates and allow a regulatory sandbox like what Brian Brooks is going to provide. And that's basically what Brian Brooks is planning on doing, is issuing guidance that does not need approval from Congress or any other regulatory bodies. Brian Brooks can issue it and have the banks custodying assets if he so desires, solely himself, and I think he will. But we're going to have to watch to see what happens there. But nevertheless, this is where we're at on this day. Guys, hit the like and subscribe. Share with somebody you know. I'll catch you on the next one.